Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel today. We wanted to start with that video clip to set the mood. I'm Sarah Nicholas. I'm the Associate Director of the Center for Women's and Gender Studies. Welcome. It's kind of a cloudy day here today, so it fits kind of this calm, creepy mood. This is our fourth event of our Feminist Futures, Feminist Pasts Symposium with the Center for Women's and Gender Studies. And I'm really happy to be introducing our panel. I am going to share with you the description. So this is Bodies of Knowledge, a Transnational Dialogue. And I am joined by three artists, really wonderful artists that I've been following for a little while, and I'm just so happy to be here with them today. Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley, Nadia Granados, and Pêdra Costa. We're going to be talking about gender, sexuality, and centering the body as a site of knowledge production. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to see a little bit of their work. And we're going to have just kind of a dialogue, like a fluid dialogue with some guiding questions. So I'm going to also, I'd like to, before we introduce the artists, I want to acknowledge that the University of Texas rests on indigenous lands of Turtle Island, also called North America. We'd also like to acknowledge the Alabama Cushada, the Cado, the Carrizo, the Cumicrudo, the Coahuiltecan, the Comanche, the Kickapoo, the Lipan Apache, Tonkawa, and Isleta del Sur Pueblo, and all of the American Indian and indigenous peoples and communities who have been or who have become a part of these lands and territories in Texas. We want to acknowledge that Texas, or that Austin and the University of Texas do reside on these indigenous lands. So if you all would like to comment in the chat throughout the introductions, throughout the videos, if you have any questions, comments, general hype for our artists, we welcome you to comment in the chat to have a conversation there. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to let Danielle, Nadia, and Pêdra introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Danielle Brathwaite-Shirley. I'm an artist and archivist, and essentially what I make is interactive works that archive or seek to archive Black trans people. Yeah, that's a short version.
Okay, my name is Nadia Granados. I am from Colombia. I work with performance art. I work with my body in internet too. I work with a character called La Fulminante, and I work with other people with communities too, in laboratories for performances, and create a kind of cabarets with Hello, Marlene.
Hi. Hello, my name is Pêdra Costa. It's so beautiful to see beautiful faces. Some of them I know. Some of them make part of my heart and my destiny in this planet. So I'm originally from Brazil, based in Berlin, Germany. I'm a performance artist, and I first stepped on stage 25 years ago. So yes, and thank you everybody. Thank you, Sarah, for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with so burning and beautiful artists.
Thank you, Danielle, Nadia, and Pêdra. It's wonderful to be here, and I appreciate, Pêdra, you taking a moment to recognize just the faces of everyone here, everyone who's here with us today, because it's wonderful that y'all could make it. So I'm going to show some of our artists' work. I'm going to show them in a row. They're about 2 or 3 minute videos. So let me share my screen again, and I am going to try to share the audio as well. Share sound. Okay, that's what Danielle was telling me. We'll optimize it for a video clip. So, okay. Y'all seen the slide all right there? Yes, okay, so some of these videos, is the audio working okay? No.
The audio is working, but there's sorry, this is Grayson speaking. There's a black square over top of the image. I don't know if that's just for me.
There's the content warning for the videos. Okay, and right. The audio is working. Okay, thanks, Grayson. Yeah. Yes, so there's the content warning for our videos, and I'm going to play this, and hopefully the audio will work just fine. If it's not, send me a chat message.
Con el equipo que está jugando en la categoría hermano. Y ojalá siga así. Y mañana le estaremos acompañando y le estaremos trabajando para hacer. Hoy el resto de la Colombia.
cabello ondulado, nariz chata, cejas delgadas, complexión delgada, cabello castaño, cabello negro, nariz aguileña, nariz chata.
Pensa que más aplauda, no. Pensa que más aplauda, le mando a la niña. Sa, 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 yakuza, yakuza. Sa, 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 yakuza, yakuza. Sa, 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 yakuza, yakuza.
¿Cuántas parejas has tenido? ¿Cuántas parejas has tenido, Mira, te voy a pedir una cosa. Te voy a pedir una cosa. ¿Con cuántos lo has hecho a la vez? ¿No? A ver, una vueltecita. ¿Es una de esas revoltosas? ¡Vuelta! 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 Te han agarrado en una manifestación. Rejega, hombre. ¿Te gustan las orgías? Así me gusta. ¿Cuánto me cobras, Ay, eres... ¿Cuánto porque te arrodilles? Ay. Oiga, ¿quién es tu padrote? Ay, la que les... A ver, mija. Te vas a tener que mochar, Pero yo sé que a usted también le gusta todos los días. Sí, no te hagas. Que se note, ¿verdad? Que lo estás disfrutando. Pero... Balada, vai!
Metendo pra lá e pra cá. Comece a me chupar. Depois come o meu cozinho só pra me fazer gozar. Comece.
We are decolonized artists. In 1557, German mercenary Hans Staden published what is considered to be one of the first published accounts of cannibalism.
Vou fazer uma orgia com Freud, Jung e Lacan.
I'm gonna make an orgy with Freud, Lacan and Jung.
Vou gozar na sua cara.
I'm gonna come in your face.
Vou lamber o seu cozinho.
I'm gonna lick your ass.
safado, deixa ele experimentar a nossa surra de bunda. Bate com a bunda, bate com a bunda, bate, bate, bate com a bunda, bate com a bunda, bate com a bunda, bate, bate, bate com a bunda. Essa é as tequileiras dando uma surra de bunda. Bate com a bunda, bate com a bunda, bate, bate, bate com a bunda, bate com a bunda, bate com a bunda, bate, bate, bate com a bunda. Essa é as tequileiras dando uma surra de bunda.
After we had discovered the technology to scan the earth and bring back your memories buried within its history, we decided to bring you back. We didn't know what to do with you at first. We thought, how was it possible to store you in a world that had once erased you? So we built this place, the Resurrection Lands, an archive designed for you by others like you. And after a while, your memories began to form bodies and began to speak, bringing you back to us. People found out that we had brought back our black trans ancestors and wanted to meet them. So we designed a way for those to access the archive. But not everyone who accessed the archive had good intentions, and it began to be misused, hacked, and reappropriated. After a while, it was not even treated as an archive, instead being treated as a game. Eventually, all access to the archive was controlled by esports tournaments, a place where two teams would enter the world in front of a live audience. You are entering this tournament to enter the Resurrection Lands. What team do you want to enter as?
All right, that was great. I always love seeing people's reaction to the videos. I know I saw Brian laughing a lot. I know my reaction when I first saw him was kind of like this. So, you know, I want to give a chance for each of our artists to comment on the videos that we saw, if there's anything that you want to explain now that we've seen your work. And then we can go into the questions that are questions for dialogue. So I don't know if Nadia, Pêdra, and Danielle, if you can give us just a short kind of context or any comments about the videos that you shared with us.
Oh, the silence. I love these awkward silences on Zoom. So I guess I'll go first. So mine was the last one, which is the Resurrection Lands, which you can all play at resurrectionland.com. It's an actual game you can play. And essentially the whole thing is about trans tourism and looking at certain people to steal information and steal particular aspects of their identity in order to consume them. And so you as a player will go in and depending on which team you pick, you'll get a different experience into this this world where our ancestors have been resurrected and digitally and gained sentience, and essentially be able to visit them, and they'll respond to you differently depending on how you've treated them within the game that you'll play. That's me.
So in my case, I got some videos from performance that I made in different places, but from the last years. yeah, normally I have days where I sing and dance, baile funk or funk from Rio de Janeiro, queer, where I started this project in 2006 in Brazil. So almost nobody was talking about queerness in the art in this time. And then the last dance, I have Trump. Now it's like was a kind of dance that I made in a queer party in Vienna, Austria. And yeah, and the another one was kind of carousel from Russian artist. He invited some artists to be during 9 days, 5 hours per day performing. And in my case, I was with another artist from Brazil, Roberta Lima. And the topic was about pregnancy, to be pregnant, or something like this. And we created a kind of space based in technologies of gender as hormones in gel and pee-pee show, dildo camera, masturbation in the Camphor Live, Viagra, and after 9 days, after everything, I was like totally crazy because I was taking estrogen and testosterone and Viagra and everything. So like the curator came to me and asked to be like fake, to have a fake hormone, to take a fake Viagra pills and so on. And I said no, because this is not theater, this is performance. So yes.
Okay, in my case, I put different works from the last 10 years, principally around La Fulminante. That is my character. I work with this character online, but too, I work in public space and I work in cabaret in theaters. And I put some performance always in life. And in this performance, my body is in the center, like a kind of way for destroy it in a way that femme fatale appearance or something like that, begin to be a kind of monster in many ways, or begin to work in the streets for talk about how the woman bodies disappear for feminicides or something like that in different places. No, I put a lot of works, no, and it's like that. No, I don't want to talk a lot because I know we have really short time, and I put a lot of works. If somebody wants to talk with me after about this, I have time and I can answer questions in the last time in the conversation, in the 20 minutes, okay? Específicamente es algo.
Thank you all. One thing that really strikes me about all of your work is how corporeal it is, how focused on the body it is. So, all of your work centers the body in some way, whether it's your own body that you're using or through avatars, right? Danielle, the video game, you have an avatar. Or, if you're just centering embodied lived experience in different ways. So I'm curious, what does it mean to each of you to center the body, right? How is the body present in your work?
I put my body in the center always with performance, with my skin, with my presence. And I think that is really strong in a country like my country, because here the violence against the dissidences are really strong. I put my body in that way in confrontation with the government, for example, because in Colombia we are in a terrible situation from the government, ¿no? Terrorismo de Estado, ¿cómo se dice eso? We are living in
terrorism state.
Terrorism from the states, no? And I work with my body like a tool for communication, no? I want to put my body like a really precarious tool for that, because here the communication is a really important weapon for put the people bajo control. ¿Cómo se dice?
Under control.
Oh, on the control, ¿no? Like, como controlar a las personas, ¿no? So, on control of the information. So, I think the performance is a way for making a kind of alternative communication. And for that, I use my body in that way. And for me, it's really important to put the body in the center, in the street, and the public space, and thinking internet like a public space. No, I begin to work video performance for that, for put my performance, but in video, in relation to with that kind of performance in audiovisual too. How we are learning all the time how control our body in front of the camera, for example. I begin in 2010, in 2010. And when I begin, we don't have a lot of these technologies, no? It was beginning, no, in a way, YouTube in 25, no? But when I begin to make performance in video was in 2000, no? And all this time, from that time until now, the last 20 years, is really incredible how all people are taking that performativity in audiovisual, no? Like in TikTok, in Instagram, all people are making videos, no? Like performance for video, no? And now is that kind of performance in video is really relevant. And for me, it was really important work with that too. Put the body in the center, but to the body in a kind of audiovisual body. Okay, I don't talk more because we don't have enough time.
So I guess for me, the way the body kind of comes into my work is I think a lot about the unseen bodies. So people that exist but are essentially invisible to those that decide to archive and record us. And I think a lot about taking control of how we archive those certain bodies. So for me, it's Black trans people. And historically, we have not been archived at all. There's been a complete erasure of our existence. And often the only forms of archives that do exist focus on either warning people away from us or a fascination with what kind of genitals we have or what kind of surgery that we might go and get. And so the work I'm trying to make really tries to not center that and tries to archive things that are about our experience, but allowing us to place a narrative on top of that so that we can expand the thoughts and feelings around our existence here, to be honest. Often I approach the work as a diary. And that's exactly how I actually started. I used to use 3D programs as a diary to record my day. And so the foundations of it are usually made of pictures of Black trans people in my life. And then I just keep compounding on that. So I'll maybe start with a picture of someone and create a C from their eyes. And then, I mean, some things around me are like some hormones, and of these walls are made of hormones. And the other one is like a machine that used to measure my heart rate and stuff. And so I usually add and add and add until the foundation is strong enough to actually hold a Black trans body, a Black trans person's experiences on top of that. Because I feel like the thing that's usually wrong is that when people like me are approached to be a part of something, the foundation never really supports the words we're saying. And so my practice is to create the foundations first and then add something on top of that, in order to hold the words and the conversations we want to have.
Hi. I was here like having memories from the last year when I was in Austin in the Outside Fest queer festival. Okay, so just to say that I would love to be right now with you all in person, but yeah. So in my case was like what started first. I was born under the military dictatorship in Brazil. My biological father is Marine and a supporter of the military dictatorship. And so since the first memory of my life that I was tagged as a kind of body or person to suffer violence or yeah, and it never stopped in Brazil. So, and then I think there is another questions like before, no, like what started first, the persecution of my body or my body on stage, right? Like I became a performer or a performance artist because of the persecution, or I become a performance artist to give back what I was receiving through the years. Maybe this situation made me brave enough to work with my butthole and to say what I have to say without fear and suffering, death threats in Brazil because of some of my works. Or do you know, it's like where starts the art and where is the limit between my individual, personal, private life? You know, it's like some questions that I'm bringing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a, yeah, where does the performance start and the personal come in? I also was, you know, struck how, Nadia, you were saying, thinking about the internet as a public space, right? And so there's this very like bodily, corporeal element. And, you know, I was interested to hear, Danielle, about like the unseen body, right? So it's not so much the body, but the archive of the lived experience. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about the technology part, right? So you all use multimedia technology in your work to intervene in narrative. You know, Danielle, you're saying that it's that narrative, it's that diary that you started with, to intervene in memory, representation of women, Black, trans people, queer and queer diasporic communities. So I'm wondering if y'all could speak a little bit to multimedia technology that you use, and how is it a medium or a tool? And then perhaps what are some limitations that technology can present?
Yeah, so for me, so I often think about and credit, I guess, like the internet and forums for introducing me to what I guess transness was. I actually didn't know what the words were, but they had all these synonyms like cis, F to M. And I didn't know what those meant, but it allowed me to see pictures and essentially diaries of individuals that were like me and going through something that neither of us understood or had the language to talk about, but we could show each other and support each other on that. And for me, the internet has been an amazing way to allow people to do that, allow people to begin to self-archive. But my issue with this is that the terms and conditions behind the websites that allow you to do this, for example, Facebook, for example, Instagram, actually do not support us and actually would actively erase us when they want to. And they can change the bar of these terms and conditions, even though we're already signed up, depending on what they want to push. And for me, the engagement in those technologies can simultaneously allow you to grow a community and then have it ripped down at the same moment. And that's the type of archiving that will happen on these platforms. We'll never remember those that are not part of that company, or not part of the structuring of that code of the company and the code of conduct that we have to abide by. And so for me, when I approach technology, it's super important that I know what's going on with the code, that I know what the code base is based on, that I know what the limitations are and the choices that people have access to, because that's just as important to me as what is archived on the site, on the platform, because without a set of terms and conditions that you are controlling, essentially some erasure will happen. Like some erasure is going to happen. So I take it as a real importance to create terms and conditions that supports the people that I'm trying to remember and archive, and doesn't support the people that I don't want to. And as well as that, the thing I love about online internet stuff is that your choice determines what you get to see and how you get to see it. And so depending on how you can interact with things, because I have a real hate for, not hate, that's a strong word, but a real current dislike for like passive work. And I think a lot of us have become very passive because we're allowed to be, because we consume so much information in such a short amount of time that being passive almost feels like a default. And I feel I really want to get away from anyone consuming anything about me and those around me passively, because the choices that the person has made to come here has affected us. All of us actually, as all as artists here, we're all affected by the choices that someone who comes to see our work, and someone who comes to see our work and claps for us can just as easily be hurting us when they leave the room. And so for me, I want the choices that that person makes in the room and away from the room to affect how the artwork treats them, and it not just be this one-way kind of interaction. That's my spiel.
You can repeat the question in Spanish, please? The last part of the question.
Sí, la idea es que todos usan la tecnología multimedia, ¿no? Entonces, para intervenir en narrativa, memoria, representación, ¿cómo utilizas multimedia, la tecnología? ¿Qué permite? ¿Cuáles limitaciones tienen?
Se había entendido entonces. So, for me, the principal limitation was the censored, because my work is really explicit in sexuality. And I was working in that way because for deconstruct that kind of female image, not of seduction. And it's weird because usually Colombian women have a lot of seduction images in media. In internet, you can find a lot of bodies almost naked, but my body was really repressed on that spaces, no? My channel was broken and censored more than 10 times in 10 years, no? Channels from like YouTube, Vimeo, Daily Motion, closed my channels for whatever reasons in relation with sexuality, explicit sexuality. And in a way, for me, if I compared my expression with other corporal expressions, no, more commons, like in sensual way, it's like nothing, no? It's not pornographic in a way. And in other side for me was a really good way have that opportunity to work with internet, because for me internet is a new thing. I know internet when I have 20 years, no, because before we don't have that too. Or when I have 25 years, we make radio, no, and was impossible think you can have your videos online, no, and when you have that opportunity in a way, it's a great thing, and put art online too, no, because art usually people want to put art in galleries, in official institutions for that. When I begin to make La Fulminante, I went for put my work for whatever can say my propose, no? And I put graffitis in the street for people going for my channel, and I make like that channel for put ideas about around the violence, no, against the violence, against the government, about the impunity in this country. And for me, it's a really, when you see the things in the time, no, because now that work have 10 years, for example, and you know, people like young people with 25 years, 22 years, and that people know that work when they have 12 or 15. It's interesting how these things change the mind. ¿Cómo se dice cambiar la mente? Change the mind of the others too, no? And that is really, for me, it's a really satisfactory thing, because really the work is doing something in others, no? Because the people talks about that principle, like young women, for example, have a new vision about art or possibilities about a speech about body, for example, no? Because when you make art, maybe you can broken some things, no? You can broken open doors for others too. And when you begin to talk in a weird language, no? When you begin to talk in a not like in a dissidence way, you can open for others doors, and that doors can open others doors for others, and it's like that, no? And for me, that thing, como like put the performance online is like you can contact with people you don't know in the presence, no? Like in the como en el físico, mundo físico, in the physical world. But I love make performance on live too. Like I say, like Pêdra, I prefer stay on live and not in Zoom now. But I understand this is a really great tool for work.
My turn. So I'm still thinking about the same question, no? Like for me, like what is performance for me and what is personal life, my personal life, no? Like if the personal is political, right? I think the queer or art queer can be biographical, no? So like if I bring, for example, dildo cameras or endoscope cameras into my work to show to the audience parts of my body that they cannot see so easily, right? When I insert a dildo camera in my anus, in my butthole, to show my inner build, for example. So I can have this tool to have pleasure in my intimacy as well, right? So where it starts again, everything, right? But I started to use, let's say, technologies with this, I don't know if you remember small slides, like small slides that you use in the classroom, do you know? Small slides with small images and so on projected on the wall. So like I started to project these kind of slides on my butthole, a performance that I made in 2002. And I was in that time starting to mix like my body with technologies and so on. But if I have tools or if I don't have tools, I still can make performance. So because I believe that my body is the arena or the field, the grounded or the most important object, subjective object to present something.
Yes, Pêdra, I remember you have in your bio, you know, the using intimacy to connect with collectivity, and kind of thinking through the biographical, right, elements of the work, or how it connects to each of you. I'm reminded of, you know, when you enter the Black Trans Archive, you get a note, you know, informing visitors that their own identity will determine how you can interact with the archive, as well as what you're able to access in the archive, right? So I'm curious, how do your own identities inform your work? All of you have spoken a little bit to that, and or, you know, Pêdra, you mentioned queer art, biographical queer art. What is your relationship to the term queer or queerness, right? Because we're also in this transnational panel where in English we use the term queer quite often, and it has a very specific meaning in the United States that has changed over time as well. So I'm curious, you know, those of you who, you know, may or may not, or have, you know, a different relationship to the term, but also, again, you know, how your individual identities inform your work.
I start, or yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. So queer, well, so like I'm saying queer because it's like in English, right? But in my case, it's bicha. Bicha is like kind of, in Portuguese, like in Brazilian Portuguese, you have like bicho, it's like animal, masculine pronouns, and then they or the society called us in the past as bicha, and now like bicha for us like queer for you, do you know? And so yeah, it's bicha. So, and I think the terminology is like so you are bringing this question to see that the words has a context to happen, and so on. So like, for me, it was like when I was reading about queer theory, for me, it was so interesting because it was a way to recognize myself, right? That like my flaming way to be, or my flaming body, or my flaming identity in Brazil was more than identity. Was like that my identity could be like into this queer theory information, that I could be like a kind of critical artist and that kind of bomb, right, to explode with some ideas of art and institution and collective and being as well.
Oh God, all right. So for me, the way that, oh God, how am I gonna start this question? Often I think when like non-white cis people are approached to make work, there's often a like freedom that they get of what work they're allowed to do. And I was finding that when I was approached to make work, people were expecting me to make educational work that would explain particular things. And I found that, or educational work, or work that was maybe traumatic that people that weren't part of my community could then feast off. And so I found that part of me was, not part of me, all of me was like very much revolting against that kind of work. And that when I saw work like that, it would never really hold me or hold my community. And instead I was waiting for a moment to be upset about. And then I would leave just feeling really annoyed and irritated. And I've kind of forgotten the question, so if I go off on a tangent, I apologize. And so when it comes to thinking about me and how I guess I involve my own identity within the work, to me, the whole work is about focusing on a people with a set identity and finding what we want to talk about, and then structuring the entire process of creating the work around that. I don't believe there's one single way that you can use to archive or tell a certain story. I don't think there's like a kind of like format that you can use that will work for everyone. And so what I usually do is I work with groups of people who are all Black and trans. They don't have to be artists, they can be anyone. And we find a way that works for us, and that's in choices, that's in what type of people can play the game, where the game is, if a person has a particular identity, what does that mean, and how does that affect what they see, and if they see anything. And that will determine the whole layout of the game and how actually we design the game together. And then from there, as we have a foundation to structure the interactivity of it, we can focus on what we want to put in. So for example, Black Trans Archive, there has an option which is Black and trans, trans and cis. And if you're cis, your experience is probably going to be maybe 15 minutes, but there's 2 hours of footage within the actual archive, which is all animated and has like, everyone has a character that's designed. But if you're not part of our community, you're not really welcome into that. It's not really your adventure to go on. It's not a representation that we need you to see. And it's not anything that we're making for you. We made it for ourselves. We're putting it out for ourselves, and we're making sure that those of us who need to see it and want to see it can. So for me, identity plays a role in determining how everyone can interact with the work, and also how choices are then implemented within this kind of designed video game gaming logic structure. I don't know if I answered the question. I kind of forgot it, but I kind of tried to swerve back onto it.
Okay, I answered the question too now. Sorry. I began to work with, understand the queer thing more after beginning to work with La Fulminante. I began to work with this more like a cis woman, and a woman talking about that constructed, how this woman is built, no, in a sensuality way, or in an obedience about how you need to be a woman in this system, no? How I learned to be a woman here in Latin America, in confrontation too with an state with a world coordinated for men too, no? Because usually you begin to grow and your objective like a woman is to be desired for a man, or be attractive for others, no? For in this way, no? Like in the way like a Latino American seduction, or that kind of Latino caliente woman, no? And in that way, I was like trying to destroy that, no? And destroy it in different ways, like in exaggeration from that, no? Because I was performing a thing, I learned that thing all my life, no? In my neighborhood, for example, no? With the music, with many attitudes, no? And when I begin to destroy that and work with this, I begin to understand more the things about queer, no? And know people from that community, No, I don't was in that community. I was more with social movements here in Colombia. No, my interest was more talk about that, no, about impunity, about different topics against the government, not against, no, was only about my gender or something like that. But when I begin to understand more things about queerness, I begin to understand that was a really a strong tool for liberation, for freedom, for myself too, because I was oppressed too in a way for that kind of learn how to be myself, no? And how I create to that kind of art or kind of characters helped me to destroy that thing in myself too, because now I feel like in a neutral way, no? And I understand queerness like a kind for freedom more than other thing, no? Like how you understand you have like an option to be out of this system, no? Really in your quotidianity, no? In each day, no? And here too is like take out that things from be a normal woman in this obedience, no? Because it's really strong, no? When you are in relation with others, no? Here to be a woman is like really stay really down for many things, no? Because you are oppressive for all, no? It's like you can't to talk, you can't to say, you can't to, you don't have anything to see for others because you don't have the reason ever. It's like, como, no sé decirlo bien en inglés, pero es como tener derecho a tener la palabra, ¿me entiendes? It's como, you can't to talk because you need to talk, but when you learn, you don't have a voice. If you learn all the time, you don't have a voice. You believe of that, no? And when you destroy that idea about yourself, you can't begin to talk and you speak for yourself. And I think this is really strong here about how you build a kind of personality or identity and female identity, because the female identity is like down or back or está siempre como abajo de lo otro, ¿no? O sea, la construcción de un género femenino, the female gender is like down of others. It's like you put down for support others, no? And you need to put yourself, no, for whatever, no, and destroy that aprendizaje, no, cuando usted aprendió a estar siempre abajo, no, y de pronto dice, ok, rompamos esto y hablemos y tengamos voz. Eso creo que ha sido muy fuerte para mí. Como, I think that is really strong for me, no, when I have a voice, no. Okay, yeah, it's a lot of.
Thank you, Nadia. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, right, about, you know, having to, some people are also putting translations in the chat, but having to unlearn sort of the subjugation of women, right, and, you know, subverting, you know, this idea that women are inferior. And I think too, Pêdra and Danielle, you spoke to, you know, making work and expected to make work, how you're expected to make work in a certain way about a certain topic, but sort of, retaking that, right? And almost in the way that the game is designed, Danielle, right? It's like the game is designed so that it already makes the choices for the person based on their identity, how they can enter in, right? And in thinking through, like, you know, what y'all said about queerness and queer, one of the things that I really appreciate about all of your work is that I see it as contributing to theories of gender and sexuality that center those who are often underrepresented in traditional spaces of theory or theorizing, right? So we could call that the academy, we could call that text, you know, when we think about theory, it's often written. So I'm wondering, how might your work push back against theory as something that the mind creates about the body, right? We have this idea the mind is creating this about the body, or that, you know, academics or intellectuals create about artists or artwork, right? Or cultural producers, or even, you know, we have this north-south, you know, the global north creates theories about the global south, right? So in thinking through theory as something that the body can do, but also embodied lived experience, right? And even all of you kind of speak to a diaspora as well, right? When we're talking about on the internet, right? What do these making theories north-south mean when it's, you know, kind of on the internet? But how might your work push back against this mind-body, north-south, academic, cultural producers, these dichotomies that we see in theory and theorizing?
Yeah, so for me, yeah, I have a real kind of disdain for people that only like listen to certain types of theory or see things that are like, say, like, I read this book so I can understand queerness better than you can, or here are these 10 phrases that I've read and deeply researched into about your own queerness, and I will put it upon you, and this is what you are. And for me, theory is lived experience. My grandma has more theory on the Caribbean than any book written here could ever say. And I feel really deeply irritated by these limited ideas of what can and can't be considered theory. And usually what is considered theory is extremely hard to understand, extremely full of long words that don't even have definitions because they have never been defined, and are refusing definition. But it's also just because this person wants to sound really smart, and they do, but at the same time they sound stupid because they're not enabling those that they're talking about to understand what they are saying. And this is the issue I really have with theory, is that someone making a video, like when I'm looking at Nadia and Pêdra's work, I can get all the theory, or a lot of it, in just those 3-minute videos that they showed me. And they didn't have to hand me a book and say, you must look at this before you understand all the context of the experience I have. Because instead they've translated it into a way that can be digested and can be looked at and said, okay, I know what you're talking about. I know what some elements that you're touching upon. But these things aren't considered theory because they're not considered hard enough to understand. If you get what I mean. Like, I feel like often those books that we love, like, I can't even remember that queer theorist book that everyone loves to read, which I will insult as soon as I get the name of. You all know it. You all know it. No, it's not that name. It's God. Oh, everyone talks about her. Everyone talks about her. Yes, Butler. So this book, I don't know. I find it really, really, really irritating because most of the people within my community don't know who this person is. You know, I've never read her book. Don't need to read her book, but there are a certain subset of people that say, well, oh, you've not read this book? Well, you don't understand yourself, or you don't understand these features of this, or you couldn't possibly get because X, Y, Z. And to me, that's really just putting a certain subset of people above others and saying, these are the queer people who are intellectual and can speak on their experience, and these are the queer people who cannot and have an experience that because they have not been researched, because they have not been written about, and because they have not studied others who have been written about, who are mainly white, because they haven't read on others. Usually the theory is written on white people, so because you haven't read the theory on whiteness about yourself, you could not possibly understand yourself. And there's a great line from that Spike Lee film called Bamboozled, in which they're in a room and the guy says, I wanted black people in the office. Everyone is white, and they give all the excuses. And he's going around the room saying, why have you hired these people? And one person, they're all giving different reasons, but one person is saying, oh, we didn't hire them because I studied African studies, and so I can understand black people better than most black people, and so they hired me instead. And I feel like this is often what we're up against, is that a non-queer person is hired to help everyone else understand what queer people are, instead of just putting queer people in the office, because they would rather have a white straight man who's written a book on, it's probably not even queerness, on like gay culture, and have him input the rules on what transgender people need in society. And I feel like that we have this huge problem with this idea that, like, if it's not written down in a specific way, it doesn't exist. It's not good enough to be implicated in a classroom or in a curriculum or in an understanding of an individual, and that we can't listen to normal people, and instead we have to listen to someone who has had a very high standard of education, and who, again, can only they can say it in a certain subset of words that only trained individuals can understand and then translate back to our community, if that makes sense. Apologies for my rant.
That was wonderful, Danielle. Thanks. I'll let Pêdra continue.
Danielle, thank you. Oh my gosh. I'm speechless. No, I don't. So, but thank you for the class about this, like about North and South, like this colonial project, right? First of all, like, is like as Spivak asked or made a question. Can the subaltern speaks, right? But the problem is not that the subaltern is not speaking, right? The problem is the North cannot listen, or right? And I think another things about academia and this kind of institution, this colonial institution, right? I think is great for many people, but for most of them, it's like the hell. It's like a super violent space. And so, and the beginning of the academia, like when they took the knowledge from astrosophy, I don't know if you heard about astrosophy. They separate that astrosophy is like a spiritual science, like so complex, where the astrology came from, and the spirituality and different knowledge for the 4 elements, and etc. And when they took this knowledge and separate, they took out the spirituality, and they have only the science, right? In a way that this is the strategy of the colonialism, to take the things from the others, and they took or for them is a garbage what is most important for me, for example, or for many people from the South, that is the life experience and the spirituality and many different kinds of knowledge that are not approved or not good enough to be in the academia, to be yeah. And yeah, and I think this is a struggle. Like, we are still here we are in academic space, and I see your efforts to change the situation, but still is still not enough. I think maybe you have to destroy the the academia.
I have a lot more questions, but I also know that we wanted to have like 20 minutes for, oh, Nadia. Yeah, sorry, Nadia.
Sorry, I want to talking about this. Really, I disagree in a way. I live in a country with a really big fight for education. People once going for the university. People once going for the academy. People wants to learn something. No, people here is in the streets asking for public education because we don't have access. Many people don't have access for an university, don't have that privilege. That is a privilege, okay? But many people of color have that privilege and begin to learn, and begin to read, and begin to speak about our experience, about our history, about our fights. Because we need memory, we need writers, we need people we need research, we need to understand the history, and we need to talk in a really with a big voice. And many people of color have that education and are producing theory too. I feel admiration for people like Sayak Valencia, for example. She's a really great theoretical person, and she's writing about violence and about identities, about masculinity, about many things. And for me, I feel excited when I learn and I can listen that kind of transfeminist theory too, you know, produced for a Mexican writer, and that people put a lot of efforts for going for the academy and learn many things and read books and put new words in against that, but with strong words too, and taking many information around. I think we have a really big brain, and we need to if we have opportunity and we have the privilege, I think it's an amazing thing too, because I feel all these people in this panel is people with privilege in a way, no? Because I know many people in the streets here with any education, with any opportunity for saying nothing, no? And in other way, we have a really strong and sad history of violence in this country, for example, in all these countries, no? And that violence is from the north, no? Viene de Estados Unidos y Europa, no? And we need to talk and create new words for that too, and we need to have layers. No, nosotros necesitamos abogados, nosotros necesitamos abogados negros, nosotros necesitamos mujeres que for example, here we have an amazing woman called Francia Marquez. She's finishing now her university like a layer, and she's a social leader from Afro communities here, and she's an amazing woman, and she's studying with a lot of effort, no? And I think that relation, when you put you put yourself in that levels, no? I think that is a thing, no? I think that relation with that for confrontation inside of the academy too, because you go inside too, but if you read a book is good, no? I think it's amazing read books, no? A lot of books from people white or black or whatever, but many people of color are writing a lot of time ago, no? We are producing our theory too, no? Feminist theory, or many people, no? Like Maria Galindo, for example, no? Sayat, Valencia, Lucia Gaña, people in the academy producing knowledge, no? In confrontation inside of the academy. I think that is a thing, no? And it's not destroyed because the academy or the history is there, and we need to open the door for other knowledge too. And the other side is when you can open new, like when you think in popular education, for example, no, when no is inside of the academy, but you can go in for a study out of this academy, no, like here in Latin America, it's really common the popular education, no, in the neighborhoods when you're going for a really precarious place and say for that people from school and talk about many things from books, from theory, from the history for change the life, because you need to have a new perspective about yourself. And you only can know that about if you can review a book, if you can review somebody study a situation and put the thing in a book. No, I think the lecture is really important. No, because if you don't read, if we are on a community, you can't do write. If you don't read, you can't do write. And write is really important too. Other thing is talk with the body, with other tools, and that things, I agree with Pêdra, no? This thing, no? We have a lot of kinds of knowledge, and that kind of knowledge don't have that recognizing inside of, no, the why things, no, or the official knowledge, but that knowledge is developing new ideas in confrontation with that when the people going to the academy and say, okay, we are here too, and we can to talk and we can to produce knowledge too. Joan Mijael, she's a writer from Costa Rica, from República Dominicana, and she talks like, I write because Black people is a town without, bueno, yo escribo porque el pueblo negro es un pueblo sin escritura. Ella es escritora por esto. Empieza a escribir porque le han dicho que su pueblo es un pueblo que no puede escribir. Entonces, a mí esto me parece súper potente. For me, that is have really potential, because it's like, you can't to talk, you can't to say, you can, no, you can, and you need to put your knowledge in confrontation with that, but you need to read that. For me, that is my opinion, really. Okay.
Thanks, Nadia.
Sorry. Thank you, Nadia. It's really amazing what you said. I agree totally with you. But still, for example, there are spaces as Candomblé, a religion that came from the North Africa now, into Brazil. It's like is a Black religion, Black philosophy of life, and so on, so on. And the knowledge of this space is like oral knowledge. It's like normally you cannot write about the secret and the mysteries of this kind of knowledge, right? It's like you have to learn in action, doing, listening, right? And reproducing through the voice, for example. So like, I think when I say to destroy the academia, it's like to destroy the power, right, of the North and the power of this space that's empty of life, right? Because if not, the academia will be another necropolitical space, and we know who will die inside this kind of institution. So it's more about this. So
it's a great debate, and honestly, I want to do another another panel or another conversation to just, I mean, I was going to say, Nadia, I really appreciate how you're like, well, you know, I disagree, and brought up a lot of, we have, I think Marlene is putting some of the people that you referenced in the chat, right? And I think that's really important to remember those people doing the work. We had an event yesterday, part of the symposium, Afrofeminisms in Cuba, which is a documentary by Tanya Saunders. And they talked a lot about how feminism and transfeminism was rooted in hip hop culture, but also, right, linking to education, right, to literacy programs. So you know, it's an interesting conversation to continue. We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to open it up if the audience has any questions, because I see a lot of folks I recognize in the audience, including some who are from some of the organizers of Outsider Fest. And I don't know, those of you who are in Austin or beyond, both Nadia and Pêdra performed in Outsider Fest. It's one of the ways that we had a conference on the couch with both of them, with Laura Gutierrez, and you know, it's one of the ways that we're also having these transnational dialogues. But you know, if anyone has any questions for our artists, you can raise your hand when in the chat. You can put your question, or just unmute yourself and ask away. We have a question that's if the panelists have questions for each other. And I did promise y'all that you would be able to talk to each other. I'm also really curious about that. If you do have any questions for each other.
I have a question for you, Sarah.
Uh-oh.
Why you are doing this? Why you are building this kind of space?
Yeah. So when I was doing my academic research, it didn't start as academic research. I was in Brazil, and I just found myself in what I would call a queer community. But I realized that queer wasn't a word that people used in Portuguese in Brazil. It was bicha, it was sapatão, it was, right, it was lesbica. So when I started doing my academic work and I started trying to write about queerness in northeastern Brazil, which is a space that's often thought of as rural and anti-modern, right? There's a lot of stereotypes in northeastern Brazil. I realized that using the term queer wasn't doing what I needed it to do, even though many of the ideas I liked them, right? But there's a normativity to queerness when we center the term queer in English, in the United States, in Europe, in these histories, right, of where queer came from a US political context, right? And so I've been looking for other models or other theories of gender and sexuality that speak more to lived experience, to, you know, like Danielle, you put it perfectly, like the people that make up our communities, right? Like that those ways of understanding and talking about and, you know, what you wear, how you talk, how you speak, what that says about gender and sexuality. So all of your work, you know, I was introduced to Nadia's work through Outsider Fest and Pêdra, just because I don't even know, I think I was just online. I ran across your video Cuseta, which is baile funky, and this asshole theory coming from the South, the global South. And I saw parallels in Nadia's work, you know, when Nadia's speaking from her ass, right, with a made up language. And then, you know, just connecting Danielle, the last work I became familiar with, but just thinking that through in digital spaces, right, with avatars, with archives. So that is what really interested me in creating the space and having you all come together and talk. So I'm really grateful to all of you for being here. And yeah, that's why I want to create these spaces and continue these dialogues, because I don't think that we can continue to talk about theories around gender and sexuality without centering the body and without being in dialogue and conversation with each other. You know, whether it's North, South, whatever countries we're in, if it's centered on the US or Europe, we're going to be missing a lot. So I see a question from Keaton in the chat. Keaton, do you want to ask it? Do you want me to ask it?
Yeah, I can ask it. So I guess I'm interested in how, for Danielle specifically, how like T for T factors into your work, or like community collaboration. I think it's like one of those experiences that like you live before you read it in theory. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, like T for T, you mean trans for trans, right? Yeah, so before I knew anything about transness or like anything, I didn't even know the words. I was already enacting my transness. I had never heard of what a trans person was. I didn't know any existed. I wasn't really part of a community. And the first time I heard the words were when someone identified me as trans femme. And I was like, I don't really understand what that means. Let me look into what you're calling me. And you're calling me to call upon me to a community. So let me see what that means. And so from there, like trans people became sort of my new family, in which I think people underestimate how much support trans people get from each other. And I don't mean just as in like seeing each other, I mean financial support, paperwork, taking you to the doctors, making sure you're okay, getting you home safe, all of these things. Like people underestimate the support of what a community that looks out for another community does. And so when I'm approaching making anything, like that community needs to be there. Like for me, it would feel so hard to make a piece of work in which I wasn't in dialogue with a bunch of trans people. And most of my community who are trans, they're not artists, they're just people. A lot of them don't have any jobs. A lot of them make their own jobs. Most of them actually, we've all made our own jobs. We all just try to find a way to get employed, and we all had to invent our own jobs. And so when it comes to looking at work, I have to make it for us. I have to make it for the things that we were talking about, the things that we needed. And what we needed at the time I made Black Trans Archive was, I was talking to friends and was like, we need an animation that has Black transness in it, that talks about transness without talking about how many tits we're gonna get, or how much our surgery is, or how sad we are, because actually that's not what we want to talk about. That's not what we need to focus on. We want to focus on the conversations we keep having all the time, or the dreams that we want, or the future. Because often when I think about the future, it's not really dwelling on the present, it's using elements of the present and putting them and trying to like draw a chart and say, okay, what could that look like if this changed? What would this look like if gender didn't exist? If the Cara people weren't wiped out by colonialism, and the Cara people are a group of people that shared one soul, and so they didn't believe in gender because they believed in everyone, everything, even the land shared a soul. What would that community look like now? And how would then we interact with each other's bodies now? And so when I'm making work, those kind of conversations are the most important. And it's super important that we come at it from those very basic conversations of, I want to see myself digitally rendered. I don't know what that looks like. I want to resurrect a trans person so I can ask, how did you die? Did you die a normal life, or were you taken before your time? And just because we've lost so much of that history, and we don't have actually much of those conversations that we can read or look at, it's so important that whilst the work is being made, that conversation is being had, so we get to actually have the conversation and an everlasting thing, or at least I hope everlasting thing after that. I hope that kind of makes sense. Apologies.
Thank you so much.
A question.
I have a signal we have.
Is you are thinking maybe put your website in other language, for example, in Portuguese and in Spanish, for open source?
Yeah, I would love to do that.
People for the South, for example, because here we have a lot of trans people maybe interested in going for your proposal, but many people here, sobre todo, precarious people, don't talk English.
Right.
You know? So it could be really interesting if you can open that door for people from the South too.
Yeah, I would love to do that. So what I'm working on now is, so I don't believe that like if I do a project in London, it would translate, not as in like just the language. I don't believe that like it should translate like one-to-one, like the trans experience in the South is so different to the trans experience in London. And so what I like to do is go get a bunch of trans people from the South and say, okay, I have the skills to make this, but you tell me what to make and I make it. And that's usually what I do. Like I don't say like, this is my idea. I say, what is your idea of the archive you want and need? Because to be honest, if a group of trans people from the South made an archive, it will be 1,000 times better than what I can make. And that's kind of what I would want to do. I'd want to be put in contact with them so I can just facilitate rather than take any control over, because I don't want any control over that. I want them to talk to those who are actually around them and in that community. So I'd love to do that. I would love to do that.
Okay. I would love to keep the conversation going. I'm going to stick around, but I do, it is 1:30, and I want to just mention before people take off that we have a couple more panels happening next week from our Feminist Futures, Feminist Past Symposium. So on next Friday, we're going to have Feminism and Young Children. And actually on Wednesday before that, we're going to have an event on Beatriz Nascimento. So if you all want to tune into those two final events of our symposium, we'll put some information in the chat. And I want to just thank our artists for being here. There's a lot of comments and even further questions in the chat. So, we can kind of just, if anyone wants to stick around and just take in some of the questions and comments, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity for future conversations, future work, right? Future collaborations in the same vein. So Pêdra, Nadia, and Danielle, thank you so much for being with us here. Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you to our captioner. Thank you to CWGS and Nancy Ewert. I know we have folks that are tweeting and doing all sorts of stuff. I appreciate everyone also in the comments helping out with translation and, marking different names and sites and things like that. It was wonderful to have you all here with us today, and I hope to see everyone again soon.
You can say bye.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stick around for a minute.
Thank you for being here.
Ciao, muchas gracias.
Ciao, muchas gracias. Obrigada por estar aqui.
Cool.
Thank
Thank
you,
so much.
Marlene, for being here.
Certeza. Hola, hola. Hey, Danielle,
Hola.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
If people want to contact you about, archives and ideas, is your website the best place to do that?
You can just email me or Instagram me. Yeah.
And the info is there on the site?
Yeah, the info's there on the site. I can
Sweet.
say.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, oh, I lost it now. I don't know where I put it. But yeah, very cool. Oh, here we go. Sweet. Let's do that. Thank you so much. That was really great. What a privilege to be here. And thanks, Sarah, for
Oh, of course. Thank you.
convening.
I appreciated your help in the chat because I was, going back and forth with so many windows and was the only one to get the captioner going. I didn't do it until 5 minutes through, so.
It's a collaboration. It's
yes.
Interdependence.
That's what I always
talking about.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Alejandra, for translating the whole thing. I hope we spoke slow enough. I know I spoke really fast at some points.
Oh, I think I could, where's the interpretation? Because they can't, I guess once I assign it, manage language interpretation, I can end it. And then I think y'all come back to us. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Alejandra and Leila. I was
Gracias.
Thank you, Alejandra, Leila.
Gracias
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you,
Muito
Nadia.
Ciao a todos.
Obrigado também. Ciao. Let's see the next step.
I wanted to say this was wonderful.
We have to stay here or not? I know I need more. I need more time with
Buena
you.
suerte, Nadia.
I need more time.
¿Podemos salir ya?
Okay.
Gracias, Nadia.
Ciao,
Bueno.
ciao.
Chao.
Thank you. Bye.
Pêdra. Chao, Sara.
Chao.
Muchas gracias.
Ciao, Nadia.